Welcome. It's the final day of FinTech Surge 2023 and the final day of Expand North Star here at Dubai Harbour. We hope those of you that have made it through with us this long week, we hope you've got a lot out of it. Hopefully it's been really informative, really valuable. You've made lots of great connections, and we're delighted to have you all here. And welcome, well done for making it with us through to the last day. We've been hearing a lot these last 3 days about the role of technology in this emerging space, about the importance of partnerships between new and old players, and the role of technology both in driving efficiencies, but in enabling change, enabling innovation, and enabling opportunities, both for innovators, for institutions, but more importantly for customers. And it's customers that we focus on a little bit more today with a look at payment technology, but we're also looking at retail and some of the trends in the retail space to see how payments is driving innovation, but it's also enabling more reach and better access for customers everywhere. Please take the time to ask questions during the day. We've got a long day ahead of us, some great sessions, but it's your event as much as it's ours, so please take time to ask questions. There are no breaks in the program as with the previous days, so there's coffee and food at the back of the room. Come in and out as you need and make good use of it. That just leaves for me to hand over to Sanjiv from BridgeDFS, who's going to be talking on our opening panel this morning. Sanjiv, welcome, and great to have you with us, and enjoy the conversation.
Thank you so much, Simon. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'd like to request Janelle. Hi, Janelle. Asim and Ahmed. Thank you. Hi, guys. Welcome. An audience, be prepared for an interesting discussion. We've got some really top-notch people sitting down with us today, people who really understand the subject very well. And it's going to be an interesting discussion, so please keep taking notes. Right? Because you're going to be asking questions, I promise you that. But before I go on, I can keep talking. Before I go on, I'm going to ask each one of the participants to quickly introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their organization and what they do. Janelle.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you for coming, because I was expecting this place to be empty. So thank you for making the time to be here. My name is Janelle, and I take care of the acquiring sales for Geidea GCC. Geidea is a company based out of Saudi, and we operate in 3 countries, Saudi, Egypt, and UAE. We've been in Saudi for over a decade old. We have almost 85% of the market in Saudi. We are a full-fledged fintech, and we manage the merchants. We work with banks, and we work with other fintechs, as we love to collaborate on the complete ecosystem. Today, first of all, thank you for having me over here. And before I get into this, I have over a minute from Sanjiv. I would like to touch upon what Geidea is all about. The company is now, led into different verticals, as I just mentioned. So we have our CEO, René Lemes, who has changed the complete overlook of this company, where we have grown strength by strength, and our culture is very different. At times, I work in a Saudi company, but I say that we work in a very corporate company because it's led by him. So very excited, again, to be out here, and feel free to reach out to me after the session. We would love to partner with you in any of the verticals that I just mentioned. Thank you.
Fantastic. Awesome. Very interesting history and story to tell.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you, and good morning to everyone. My name is Asim Chohan. I'm a senior vice president at one of the top Wall Street companies. I have a 20-year experience working in 5 different industries. I worked in airline industry for credit risk. I worked for insurance, for banking. Currently, I manage portfolio. I do portfolio management function, some CEO activities as well. I also am here in my personal capacity, but working with some fintechs locally here, and then also farming as one of the things that I do on the side. So it's an interesting combination of Wall Street, farming, and fintechs.
So, welcome. I reserve the best for the last. Ahmed?
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ahmed Awadi. I'm the MD and CEO of FintX. FintX is the fintech arm of Emirates Post Group. And within FintX, we have two main companies licensed by the Central Bank of UAE. One is Wall Street Exchange, which is the brick and mortar offering money exchange, remittance, and WPS. And we have Instant Cash, which is an MTO. It's a company that provides service on B2B, and it has more than 70 countries that they have agents in, and they transfer money. At the same time, we are on a journey to go more digital and create our own pure fintech player within the group. And being part of Emirates Post Group, of course, the infrastructure is there for us, and we have a lot of assets that we can build on and expand more into the financial services. Very happy to be here, and very excited to be talking to you, gentlemen and ladies, and answering your questions at the end.
And I'm Sanjiv Purushotham from BridgeDFS, Singaporean in the Middle East. My company brings in financial technology from South and Southeast Asia into Middle East and Africa as channel partners. And so I get a very good overview of fintech from pretty much around the world. So I'm just going to start off, right, get into the meat of it, and we're going to start talking about some of the big questions that are, that we've been kind of, and I'm just going to go one by one. The biggest question that I have is that somehow or the other, a lot of money has gone into this UX, the UI, the user interface, rather than the user experience, right? And what we know as veterans in the industry is that it's not about the UI, it's really about the UX, right? It's the user experience overall. And the most effective UXs have actually happened on some of the most basic technology. For example, M-Pesa, a super app for all practical purposes, running on an SMS-based platform, USSD, signal layer switching, that kind of stuff. So what is your approach? What do you think as each one of you start developing your own super app thinking and themes? So maybe I could start with you, Ahmed.
I agree. It's the user experience, which is the most important thing. And the example you brought, it actually takes us a bit before user experience. It's the user need. So I think it all starts with the customer need. And M-Pesa is a great example. I'm quite familiar with it because I worked in telecommunication companies, and the initiative actually started with a telco, not with a financial service provider. And at that time, in many countries in Africa, almost 80% of the population were unbanked. So there had to be someone who can fulfill this emptiness and provide financial services. And it wasn't about fancy super app. It was just about transferring money from people who work to their family. And only telcos were able to do that because they had the presence, they had the foot in the street, and they had their distributors. And that's very much what we call it today, brick and mortar. So they used that to provide the services to their customer, and it worked very well, and they expanded on that, and gradually they moved from a very simple technology, USSD, to more like 3G, and then, with the 4G, they were able to create the applications and add more and more services. But the fundamental of that business was there. It was about customers needing certain services that the industry was not able to provide, and they provided that. Actually, that made a lot of telcos and financial services go crazy because, a very good model. And now how to replicate that in other countries, right? I think that's the challenge. Again, each country is different. You need to come with a localized solution for each country, understanding the segments of the population. For example, in the UAE, we have almost 20% of the population, more or less, that's unbanked still. So for them, the brick and mortar is still relevant. And even though we are all on the journey to go more digital, but starting with the brick and mortar and the face-to-face interaction with the customer, that helps them to get into the digital experience faster and in a better way. You mentioned about the customer experience. Again, if 20% of the population want the face-to-face experience and the trust they have with the agent when they transfer their money, then you need to provide that. You cannot assume that they overnight can switch. So it's a journey that we are all going, and I think whoever has the fundamentals to put together and build that journey and be successful, he will make it.
So can I just ask a corollary run-up to that, a quick one, right? And specifically to you. You've been, Emirates Post has been a very respected institution that's dealt with the entire population of the UAE for the longest time. And there's probably very few other companies that have that same level of understanding of the human experience, right? So as you look at it from a more traditional and a more established kind of point of view, what do you think are the things that you can bring to the fintechs where they have this, they come from a completely different place, they talk about user interfaces, digital experiences, but we know that life is not digital, it's actually quite physical. So any thoughts on that? How does Emirates Post encourage fintechs to start thinking more practically?
Well, I think with Emirates Post Group, we have the biggest database in the UAE. We know all the corporates, we know all the SMEs, we know all the individuals. We have a strong presence in most of the cities, most of the neighborhoods in the country. The name by itself gives us access to most of the post worldwide, which again, they present a big kind of dominant player. So having all that together give the customer and the businesses the confidence of working with us. Now, I think it's a matter of how to use this gold mine in a way that we are able to commercialize it, to digitize it, to have it as a good customer experience, and have it at the same time at a reasonable, value for them. And I think all the fundamentals are there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ahmed. Asim, interesting question for you. You actually worked on a super app before super app was actually a word, 14 years ago. You ran an entire operation technologically, for the US military, right? And your application actually served their insurance needs, their bank transfer needs, their deposit needs, their entire life planning needs. So tell us a little more about how you moved from being a technologist in that space to being, now one of the foremost business leaders in Morgan Stanley. So, yeah.
So thank you. I think what Ahmed was talking about is basically goes back to fundamentals. Fundamentals is basically you have to look at the needs of the customer, right? Because that's where your demand is created. And then you look at the services, which is the supply. So it's a very old concept. We're just basically modernizing it. If you think of super app, you think of a mall, right? Where you can go to one big mall and get different types of products. So you have horizontal super apps, which are giving you different types of products and services, or you can have vertical super apps, which are basically focusing on one industry, for example, banking, right? So when we thought about super apps back then and how we have kind of evolved into the journey, the main thing is you understand the needs of your particular client and your targeted customers. And if you think about it, whether it's military people, their families, or even individuals, we want to make sure that you open up from a user experience to one-stop shop for people to be able to come and to be able to purchase and get that services that they really want, right? So you have to build that connection. One thing that I think is very important as we think about super apps, as we talk about it, we will talk about financial inclusivity in a little bit, but basically localize your experience, because what's going to happen as more and more super apps are built, you will be collecting a lot of data about users, right? You will be expanding your market base. Now you're not stuck in a physical building. You're going into villages, you're going to small towns, you're going to cities. So don't forget that not your customer base will not be the same for every location. So you need to have, just like you need to have localized cultural marketing, you need to have that. So I think it's a continuous evolution of customer needs to understand what they really need and to be able to expand and making sure that you don't lose the focus, because as advantages come for super apps, there could be disadvantages. You can lose focus, you can have cost barriers, you can have other issues that could be regional, could be religious, faith-based, or the cultural sensitivity that you need to make sure that's baked into your super app strategy.
Sorry, Janelle, there's a question for you, which is, ultimately, as we in the payments business say, you can do all the fancy footwork you want, but then it all boils down to the moment of truth when you actually have to make that payment. Commerce doesn't happen until that payment actually happens, right? And you guys are the ones that make that payment happen, right? So I'm sure that at the end of the day, all these brilliant super apps and brilliant ideas that are going out there ultimately come to Geidea's door and say, tell us, how can we create that moment of truth? And what are you seeing about how do you, when you see all of these different user experiences, how do you explain to these entrepreneurs and the startup and even the larger digital companies that nothing matters as much as that moment of truth when you actually have to make the payment? So could you tell us a little more about that journey?
So in Geidea, we work on 3 C's. One is on the cost factor, compliance, and of course, we collaborate with all the fintechs. We don't look at them as competition, but we look at them as collaboration. So over the time, we have signed up. So when we look at a super app, there are some great super apps out here in the market. We look at Noon, we look at Kareem, and there are some STC Pay. So what we do with them is that we come down to the fact that they have different industries that they work with, right? So we look at, let's say, a food. You order a food, or you have, you look at your etisalat, your bill payments. So what we come to them and we tell them, like, listen, you can work with any other partner by opening the API. So our system is built in such a manner that we tell them, come with us, and there are open APIs where they can work with Geidea. That's the overall ecosystem that we have. So what does that take care of? First is, number one, is cost, because it all boils down to cost. The merchant says, why should I convert my cash into a cashless society? So what we do is, there are industry-wise MDRs and commercials that we divert that transaction into that rail. And that helps the merchant to say that, okay, my transaction happens instantly. It is more risk and compliance driven and cost effective. So overall, we have seen that trend happen over the time, and we have built our rails suiting merchant needs. Because what happens is, Sanjiv, is that yesterday's technology is today's history. So we have to continue innovating, continue investing in our infrastructure to manage the footfall, and have more user experience for the merchant, because we work under B2B. So it has to be simple, instant, and speed to market. Because if we are slow in doing what the customer needs are, we don't have that edge in the market. And that's what Geidea is all about. We continue investing, working, and understanding what the customer wants. And then we start working at the backside of it to ensure that that seamless experience happens at the merchant, and he sees cost as a saving factor to partner with Geidea as a partner.
So what we conclude from that user experience discussion is that user experience is not about the digital UI. It's about understanding the cultural aspects, understanding the marketplace, understanding what is it that people really need, and then creating the business models for that. And then, as Asim alluded to brilliantly, saying that at the end of the day, it's really about making sure that we are building, not losing focus when we are building out, this super app. And what I loved about what you said, Janelle, was that yesterday's technology is today's history, right? And payments is a very complex world. And so this art of understanding how to maneuver through the various rules that the payment companies create is something that only an interpreter like Geidea, can bring about. But that brings me back to the question relating to the business model, right? We are fortunately back to a time when profit matters. And it's been a crazy ride of maybe 13, 14 years where it was all about valuations and all kinds of other crazy stuff. Okay, let me not say crazy stuff, but a different method of valuing a company, right? And we're all traditional people here right now. And so the fact that we are on stage is actually a testimony to the fact that the world is coming back to understand profit. So as I look at it, Emirates Post Group brings a history of governance, of infrastructure, of capability, and so on and so forth. What is your view on encouraging fintechs and bringing them on with the right kind of business model infrastructure, with the right kind of understanding of how to do business? Ahmed.
Well, I don't know if you knew that I'm an ex-CFO, so asking me about profitability and margin, and then I can go on for hours and talk about it. But I'll try to don't think about that. I think it all starts with the investors. Who's behind these companies, right? So each investor will come with a different perspective. Some investors are have more risk appetite, and they look at longer term more, and they look at maybe certain products and benefits that's not clear for everyone. And this is why we have startups and people who can think outside the box. And then we have certain investors who are more return oriented, shorter or medium term return oriented, and they look at the fundamentals of the business, and they have certain legacy. They cannot get away from it. So it depends on what type of shareholder or investor you have. Now, I think the right thing to say is that it all works. So everyone should have the right to think and invest in whatever type of company he feels comfortable with and he sees the value. And at Emirates Post Group, we are a permanent company. We are 100% owned by the federal government of UAE. So the business model we look at is that when this business will become profitable. I think that's a very important question. And then we have looked at the fintech companies and the startups and people with a lot of great ideas and technology that can support the financial services. And in the last 2 years, I think we all have witnessed how this valuation has gone down. So obviously, not a lot of them are really able to generate profit, or they don't even have a plan that shows when they will become profitable. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, some of these companies can survive in a different way. They can be a partner with a more permanent companies, and then together they can make a business model work, because sometimes the technology by itself will not become profitable. You need much more beyond that. And this is what actually we are doing. I mean, one of a good example is Instant Cash, our MTO. We've been supporting FinTech since beginning. So we are supporting FinTech, the money remittance part. So we are working as enabler for them. So we have continued supporting them. Of course, we always make sure that we make money, because we cannot subsidize them, but I don't know if they make money. So it's a difficult question. And again, my answer is depends on your risk appetite and what's your vision, long-term vision.
Yep.
With your experience across banks, across multiple organization types, tell us more about business models and super apps.
I think one of the points that Ahmed made, and it's a very critical point, no matter what business you're going to run, fintech, super app, local app, you need to have a vision, and then you need to have a strategy. You can't just start building things up because you think it's a great idea, right? Think through what will basically transform that particular idea into a tangible business model. There's a research out there that super apps can increase the user engagement by 60%. It can also increase revenues by like 40%, right? The key, again, is basically going to be what is your focus, what are you trying to drive? And the business model is easier for big enterprises going into supermodels because they have the money. They have the infrastructure, they have the resources, they have the skill set. A lot of people who believe, and I've met with a lot of founders and a lot of entrepreneurs, they really believe on what they think will be the next biggest thing. The key is get outside opinion, right? Look outside your box, see what competition is out there, and how you can integrate. Because sometimes your super app's development is going to be stage-wise. You're not going to be on day one a super app. Other big companies that have started, they started just as social media or just as e-commerce, and then once they start generating revenue, they can expand the infrastructure behind it. So really, at the end of the day, your business model transformation should be stage by stage. It should go as you start building your capabilities. And one thing that, again, I would like to support what Emma said, is also look at partnership and synergies. At the end of the day, money is what they're going after, but what's important is that you are talking to people, you're open to ideas, you're open to what I call positive criticism, to be able to go and reevaluate how you change your course of action to be more effective and more productive.
So question to both of you, actually, because you talked about the development of the model. You talked about stage development, right? And you're a CFO. I'm of sort of the background that where every single, sorry, I'm of the background, thank you. I'm of the background that every single development that you do in your business model evolution has to fund the next development, right? You can't be funding a development without some profitability at the back end. So how do you see the evolution of that in the development of technology, especially in the UAE, in terms of funding based on profitability, creating more and more value based on the last success?
So I'll go. I think, look, you cannot survive standalone, right? You need people to help you. And the countries who have really done well in digital economy, it's actually been a collaboration. You need to have governments, you need to have local businesses, you need to have ministries, you need to have even educators kind of come and help you and try to drive what will be the best solution forward. And at the end of the day, I think the collaboration is a key, partnerships is a key, because not in all cases you will be stage 1 really profitable to fund on your own stage 2 or stage 3. You need to be able to open your heart and minds and be able to partner and synergize with people who may know a little bit more, who may be able to invest in you. So I think it's a constant thing that you do in a corporate world. You cannot alone make the company successful. You need to have a team. You need to have people who have different skill and expertise. And they always say, for you to be successful, you need to be surrounding people who are a little bit more smarter than you and a little bit more different expertise than you. And I think that's the same model that goes here.
Ahmed, what's your view on stage?
Do you really think I can add anything after what he said? I mean, I totally agree with him. It's, the question was about the funding and where the funding will come from, especially with what we have seen lately. I think it's about two things. It's about the concept, whether it's a technology or an application or a concept. And it's about the party that can find the use in that. And if there is a party, a company, or investors who know how to use that in a profitable way, then they will definitely fund it. But if there is no one who can see the potential of that, then I think it will be difficult to fund the concept without, a clear business model.
So, Janelle, you live in a world of wafer-thin margins, right? There's hardly any margin in a payment. And despite that, Geidea has been able to fund the development of an absolutely fantastic technology stack. Could you give us some background as to what is the vision behind that? How did it happen? What created this Fort Knox-like capability that you have in Geidea? So tell us a little more about that.
So Geidea started the business over a decade old, right, in just the POS vertical. And then we moved into the banking side. So what we have evolved, and again, it's understanding what the baseline is. So we have today 3 verticals in our business. One is the ECR solution. We have the payment solutions, which are end-to-end. So we have offline, online, a complete ecosystem. And the third one is value, VAS. So we look at, and we started partnering with and collaborating with fintechs who offer BNPLs. Like today, you look at Tabby's, Postpay, Tamara. So we collaborate, right? So what have we done on the payment layer? We made it as the most powerful proposition. Merchant comes to us and we facilitate him from his value-added services, from his payment acceptance, and from his ECR. So the company has evolved given the experience we have had. And not necessarily what is good in KSA has been great in Egypt, because different markets come with different because of the strengths of different markets, you have to develop. But the infra has been so greatly done that whichever country we go in, we take that technology and then we open APIs and we start partnering with those fintechs or those small players to get our solution up and running in UAE, for example. So that has been the model. And again, a lot of fintechs have started, investing, and we continue investing in our technology because our revenue models are divided into 3 verticals, as I mentioned. So that has helped us to get our bottom line, right, and to also maintain our volumes and work with our partners globally in all the 3 markets.
Fantastic. So just coming back to that point about different markets, different technologies, different use cases. So Ahmed, to you, arguably, some countries have built their built country-level super apps, like for example UPI in India or Pix in Brazil, right? Where there has been a lot of public investment or what they call digital public infrastructure. Other markets, for example, like Saudi, have developed a kind of a digital infrastructure, but leave it to players to adhere to the rules, but build their own innovation stacks within them. What's your view? Is there a need for creating a massive digital public infrastructure, or should the market forces evolve in each market according to the market's economic model? What's your thinking on that?
Well, I think the answer is depends from country to country. In certain countries that the private sector is not too advanced and they don't have the investment or the appetite to put a huge investment for the infrastructure, then the government has to play a role. And if the country is very liberal and already you have most of the players have their own infrastructure, then maybe you leave it for them and you stay as a regulator, putting the framework, the policies in the place. Now, I think in the UAE, we are somewhere in between. And I think it's not a wrong action if the government or the central bank come and put some infrastructure that can help the private sector to think of business models and applications on top of that. Having said that, it also comes with its own challenges, because owning an infrastructure, maintaining it, keeping certain SLA, KPI in place is also not that easy. So if you're not able to put that in place in an efficient and sustainable base, you make it difficult for them. And if you also put that in place with the pure commercial point of view and trying to make a big margin out of it, then it will make it difficult for the private sector to do their own business. So there should be the right balance between the country's will of what they can put in place and the business model in a long-term point of view, and what you can leave for the private sector to play in and come with their own creativity, agility, and the way they can provide certain products and service to the public.
Asim, you bridge two completely different cultures, right? You bridge the US, which is a pure open market economy, and then you also belong to a country and a region which would do with some digital public infrastructure, right? So how do you bridge that? How do you think about that, the building of a core underlying model, whether it is private sector or public sector, for economies? And you have experience of two completely different worlds.
I think, again, it's a combination, because the countries who have done really well in terms of digital economy, they have made sure that it's a collaboration effort. So basically, they have collaborated with government, with private sector, with local entities. They've brought in the ministries, the regulators, and people who are really smart about these things. So because we sit in a different region right now than what I'm used to, living in US, I think the partnership opportunity should not be lost. If you don't have resources within your own region, you should reach out, right? The more you seek expertise that are coming in, and that's where I think diversity of talent is really, really important. Because if you're used to one system, you're kind of in the mind, you're kind of trained that way, right? You're not exposed to different things, and that's where, again, I'm going to put my D&I hat on for a second, but that's where if you do the research, there has been research done that 85% of the CEOs of major companies have said diversity actually helps their business model, right? So if you want to build the infrastructure and you don't have the right resources or expertise, go seek them. The world has come together with the global communication, with reach outs. You should be able to leverage and expand on it. And especially in terms of infrastructure, the key thing for super apps or any apps is internet access. If you don't have internet access, it doesn't matter what you build, because it's not going to expand to the different communities, and then you're just going to be stuck in urban cities, basically, right? Like in Pakistan, for example, more than 50% of population lives not in main cities. They live in villages and in rural areas. So if you don't have infrastructure to be able to provide internet access, they can't use any app. And then you're losing your consumer base of 50% or more, and you're not generating revenues, you're not providing services, and you're leaving them behind, basically.
Unless you take an M-Pesa model and you don't use the net at all. But that's, unless you take an M-Pesa model and you don't use GSM totally. Now, your experience on this whole business models. And you explained it actually brilliantly, saying that each market has a different way of doing things. So what's your view? Do you think, in your experience, as you work with different markets, each one has its own policy towards a public infrastructure, own policy towards how things are governed? What's been your experience as Geidea having to adapt to all these different markets?
So for us, first we have like external, people who go and learn about what the market is all about, right? So we have to be agile. We have to adapt to what the market is. For example, in Egypt, we launched our business close to 2 years back, and in that business, that market is where UAE was 10 years back. So we are looking at a lot of bill payments done and acceptance done on the brick and mortar. So the e-commerce side of it is still yet to come down there. So with Geidea, we have done a lot of case studies before we entered the market, and that's the direction which comes from the top. Understanding what the market is and building that infra which we currently have, and then scaling up, because having a scalability model has helped us to acquire almost 20% of the market share in the last 2 years in Egypt alone, right? So overall, what works in Egypt has not really worked in UAE, right? Because different markets come with different, mindset, different culture. But building what is good for the UAE, because culture comes in a lot more, right? You have to be adaptable. You have to be building, which is under your risk and compliance side of it. You have to make sure that trust and worthiness, customization in a local land has been our forte all over the years in Geidea. And that has been one of our success story, that we work with the partner and they ride on our rails.
Fantastic, thank you. Ahmed, FintX promises to bring governance, discipline to the Fintechs that you bring on board. Tell us a little more about your thinking about that.
Sorry,
I said FintX promises to bring governance and financial discipline and understanding of basic business to the Fintechs that you are bringing on board. Tell us a little more about that vision of yours and why you want to make it happen for the UAE.
Well, within FintX, as I said at the beginning, we have 2 licenses from the central bank. And to get license from central bank in the UAE, you need to have very strong governance department. And there are a lot of requirements, laws, and policies that you need to adhere to. So doing business under regulation is not easy, right? And then especially doing business and remittance between different countries make it even more complex when it has to do with money remittance. Then tapping into corporate and SME and doing business with them again makes it another layer of complexity. So governance and regulation is something that we are very disciplined with, and we have it on top of our head. Now, adding to that, the financial governance and the business model and the profitability and the right strategy, all these are important for us. So when we look at any opportunity, again, we look at what this opportunity will add for our group. Is it an opportunity that can create easy synergy and we can expand on it and add it as a product to ourselves, or have it as a separate company and have it like a company that supports other, operators within the region? So there are different ways that we can think of it, but I think it's in our DNA to look at things in a structured and in a best manner to make sure that we don't dilute any value of the existing businesses that we have.
Okay. Question for, just going to ask Janelle. And Janelle, the future of commerce, is it going to be offline or online?
I would say a combination of both, right?
Well said.
I would say a combination of both, because again, going back, in UAE, we have, a lot of retail outlets. So brick and mortar is here to stay, and e-commerce is here to stay, because post-COVID, we all have seen there's only new technology coming in. So I would go back and say brick and mortar and e-commerce, combination of both will go a long way from now on. There's no looking back in all the markets overall.
As a farmer who has 100 acres under cultivation, right? And a community of people that don't have the access to financial services in one of the most, I would say one of the most difficult regions in the world to live in. What is your view on how super apps can bring in financial inclusivity? And tell us a little more about your farming.
We'll talk about farming a little bit offline. Okay, so I'll talk about financial inclusivity. There's 1.7 billion people today who have not access to any financial services. There's 1 billion people today who do not have a formal ID. They cannot prove who they are. There's about 30% of population who do not have access to electricity, right? There are 3 billion people who do not have access to nutrition, good nutrition meals in a day. So when you look at all these different factors, we are very blessed sitting here today. And the key for financial inclusivity is to make sure that as we are looking at strategies and financial profitability, everything, we don't leave people behind, right? The main, I think, real advantage of technology is inclusivity. And inclusivity comes in very different ways, right? It's not only you providing services, but you're also providing literacy. And literacy could be financial literacy, media literacy, technology literacy. So you build the concept for generations, in future generations, to be able to make a difference. And when you talk about Pakistan or other region and farming a little bit, it's basically what we all try to do is make a difference, whether it's in our personal life, family lives, or in general society. And when you take these factors and you think beyond yourself, you will be able to leverage that whatever I can do in my personal capacity, as a professional, as a business person, or just as a human being, you can make a difference in a lot of people's lives. And when I think of financial inclusivity, I think we think of not only our family friends, but general population, underserved population, people with disabilities, you know, with a lot of advancement in technology, we're breaking language barriers. There are chatbots that actually talk to you in your own regional language, right? As we create apps, do we think about people who have disability? Maybe they need voice recognition or voice capabilities to be able to use apps. So I think when we think of all the things that we want to do in life, we should look beyond ourselves and our little domain, and I think we all can make a difference together.
So let's go back to how we started this discussion. We talked about the what, the how much, right, and who. The what is usability. Can we actually create usable applications that can bring in financial inclusion? We looked at how much, meaning, can these actually make money, right? And then we looked at who. Who's going to do this? Is it going to be the government? Is it going to be us as industry players? Or is it going to be a combination of both? And I think the jury that, at least in my opinion, as we round up this discussion, is that it has to be market specific. It has to understand the evolution of the market. And in every market, including ours, the one that we are sitting in right now, there is a need for financial inclusivity. As there is a need for financial inclusivity in Egypt or in Pakistan or in any other market, right? And in each one of these cases, the what, the how much, and the who will do it will change. And with that, I'm kind of, before thanking the panelists, the excellent panelists, please give them a round of applause. I think they've been absolutely fantastic. But also, it's a great opportunity to ask, you won't get an opportunity to ask people like this questions on the area of, super app development, about how money is to be made, how we can make financial inclusion possible. So any questions from the audience? Don't lose this opportunity. Yes.
Hello, thank you. Hi, I'm Claude Stephanie. I work for Citigroup, and we help fintech companies raise funds from international investors and list on the stock exchanges. So my question actually relates to the earlier remark you had around the M-Pesa model, which we've seen evolve quite successfully in Africa. In your region, so in Saudi, in the UAE, how do you see the combination working between the fintechs, the telcos, and the banks? Is it a cooperation model? Is it a competition model?
I'm going to ask Emma to answer that one.
I think it can be all, but what's the ultimate model? I think that's the right question. And my view is that it's a collaboration. I think that the telco, talking about this region specifically in the UAE, it's the highest, the network coverage is the highest in the world. The speed of data is the highest in the world. I mean, you can think that, you can guess I used to work for Etisalat, right? The mobile smartphone penetration in the UAE is also the highest in the world. So I think from telco perspective, one more thing, the prices is not necessarily the cheapest in the world, to be fair. So from infrastructure perspective, I think you have it here. So that's something that they provided. Now, the question for telcos, whether they can expand and work into fintech domain or no. And I think it has to be seen. I think both Etisalat or and do had certain initiatives, but we haven't seen them to be the best up front runner when it comes to financial services. Now, the financial services, again, they have their own infrastructure, the banking infrastructure, the compliance, and the relationship they have with other financial institutions, whether they can use that and be more digital-oriented and digital reach to their customers and provide services in a more efficient manner. Again, we need to see how far they can get. Then you have the pure fintech players who are great, technology is great, very agile, but then do they have all the needed fundamentals behind their business? So when you have three elements and each one of them come with a question mark, I think collaboration will be usually the best answer from my perspective.
Yes, hi, my name is Abdul Karim. I'm from Wall Street Exchange. Regarding Asim, you just talked about financial inclusion, which is a very important topic, actually. Yani, we know that a lot of governments are trying to include people. And as we know, a lot of people, especially in the underserved population, they're not able to understand even what they can benefit from the financial services. So is this the responsibility of only governments, or can we say international organizations can help? Even from the fintech part, they can help in order to add more people and let them understand on the financial inclusion what the benefits are for these underserved people.
I think financial inclusivity actually starts from your home. We have seen a lot of divide in education, whether it's between boy, girls, and different family members' education. So it's a combination of everything. You need to have government, you need to have families, you need to have communities. One other thing that I think it really impacts communities, underserved communities, is the level of training that our teachers get. If your teachers are still teaching a curriculum that's 10, 20 years old, your kids are not learning computer and new technologies, and they're not advancing in their thinking, right? The countries who have really excelled in technology revolution, like India, for example, they have kids learning technology at a very, very young age. So I think it's a combination of government, private sector, public, and communities to be able to help bring financial inclusivity. I know we are over time, so I'll wrap it up. We can talk more. Yeah? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sanjiv and panel. Great. Just take a quick photograph here.